Hello everybody, my name is Lisa Rose. I'm the Festival Director for Queer Screen. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land of where I'm streaming from, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded in Australia. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you all for being here for this live Q&A for the wonderful documentary Ahead of the Curve. We have some really exciting guests here for this interview, so I'm going to just bring them in straight away. First of all, we have Jen Rainin and Franco Stevens.
Hi.
Oh, I pressed the wrong button. It happens. And then we've also got Rivkah Beth Medow. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you everybody for being here. So Jen is the director and co-producer, and Franco, of course, is the wonderful founder of Curve Magazine and Documentary Subject. And then Rivkah is the producer and co-director. I got that all correct, didn't I?
Yes, good job.
Good. So I'm not stuffing everything up. Okay. So I just wanted to start off first by asking Jen, obviously you've made a film about your wife. So when did the idea kind of come to you about making a documentary about Franco and Curve?
So, gosh, early in our marriage, I started thinking about telling Franco's story as a narrative film. It's just the more details that she gave me about the early years of establishing the magazine. Things like, in order to get the money to do this, I took out 12 credit cards in one day, cashed them all out, and went to the racetrack. And, I bet on the horses and won 3 times in a row. Stories like that, I thought, oh, this is going to be an amazing fiction film. So I started writing the screenplay. And in researching, in researching for the film, I realized how little really great source material there was in terms of other documentaries, nonfiction stories that told our history, that told queer women and lesbians' history. And I started to feel a real deep sense of responsibility as I continued to reach out to Franco's former colleagues and friends and family to tell the story as a nonfiction film. And so, yeah, that's really where the idea came from.
Yeah, so you've kind of given me 7,000 segues there that I kind of wanted to go into. And I'm going to do one first that I wasn't planning on bringing up till much later. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a narrative filmmaker, and she watched the documentary and loved it. And she's like, that needs to be a narrative film. And so the fact that you were started on that is so interesting. I didn't know that you started writing a narrative film. So I'm just going to ask the really ridiculous question, so who would be your dream casting for the two of you? Because obviously you'd be...
Well, I'm not sure I would be in it. I think
at the time of when you would be setting it.
Yeah, I think for a narrative version of this, we would stop years before I come on the scene. So it really would be the question is, who would play you?
Oh, well, it'd have to be somebody like 21 years old, or somebody that could pass for that young, because that's about how old I was when I started the magazine.
I don't know.
You can think on it and come back to it later. Maybe some people in the comments. I don't know. I'm not sure, but there need to be someone who is kick-ass and can really get the essence. It's such a ballsy thing. I can't believe that you took all those credit cards to the racetrack. Is that also how you funded this film?
Because there were credit cards involved. I think and we did go to the racetrack, but we didn't bet. I do the betting. She does all the betting for the family.
Yeah, right. Okay. So Rivkah, can you just talk a little bit about how you got involved with the project?
Yeah, sure thing. So Jen and I have been friends for a long time, and we were actually driving in a car. Jen had told me about this film. I'd learned a little bit about it. She'd been kind of dropping hints that she was doing a documentary. So I was very curious because I like to make documentaries, and we were driving in a car over to a friend's launch of her production company. And Jen said something like, she's having a hard time finding a producer. And I remember I was in the front seat and I turned around and I was like, oh, you are really? I said, well, I would love to be your producer. And she was like, well, I think that we have a deal. All right, let's do it. So then it was, that was in 2017. And that was what, Jen, that was like November of 2017. And I think we were filming by March of 2018. Yeah. So got really busy really fast.
We've got some comments coming through of suggestions of who should play. I do like this one. 90s Laurie Petty. Let's go back in time and get some 90s Laurie Petty. I like that.
Totally.
Good suggestion.
I mean, people used to say Demi Moore for you, right?
Oh, yeah. And we've got two people saying Stuart.
Like it.
Yeah. They're all excellent ideas. So, Jen, was there ever any point, because obviously making a film about your wife, like you're incredibly personally connected to this, was there ever any point where you were like, I don't know if I'm the right person to tell this story?
No. No, I never had a second of doubt about this one. No,
Okay.
I just, because it's such a personal story, because Franco's a very private and actually surprisingly shy person. I don't think that there's another person out there who would have been able to, I don't know, tell the story in the same way. Plus,
I think what she did was these two made me feel comfortable enough to be able to answer the questions that on a normal day I'd just be like, yeah, no, that's off limits. I'm not gonna answer that question. I really let them dig into any area that they wanted to ask me, from, financial troubles to my disability to, some of my greatest fears and dreams, and being so close to me they let me feel like it was a safe space. And I don't know that I could have just gotten there with somebody else.
Yeah, and so how has that experience been for you? Like, obviously that they've created a safe space for you to do that, but now it's obviously been, the whole world is seeing it. So how has that experience been for you so far?
It's very, I feel extremely vulnerable. So let me just tell you, we premiered the film at Frameline San Francisco at a drive-in. I hadn't seen the film in its final cut, and then I was in front of 1,000 cars watching it at the same time as as my community.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it was, everything was weird about it, from hearing my own voice to, in my own mind, I'm still, 23 years old and creating this magazine. And, that's really not the case. And I felt really scared, but I also felt like it was the right move to be able to bring the story to the people, and hopefully somebody can use it towards good.
Yeah. So how was that? Look, here's James Woolley, Executive Director of Frameline. James used to work for our festival and City Film Festival, so that's, anyway, just thought I'd pop. Hi, James. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the word lesbian. So obviously the word lesbian was on the cover of the magazine, and then for a period of time it was not on the cover of the magazine. And when you go through talking to all of the young people today about that word, I mean, I'm a 42-year-old lesbian. I came out in 1996, I think, I can't remember. And I remember it took a long time for me to want to label myself that way, and I tend to say gay more than anything else. So I wanted to sort of hear a bit more about why it was so important to have that word on the cover of the magazine.
Well, in 1990, when we first started the magazine, putting the word lesbian on the cover, according to all intents and purposes, was equated to shooting ourselves in the feet.
Why?
Okay.
Why?
Because not only was there never a magazine that said lesbian on the front cover, but magazines were failing left and right, and it's an unproven market. And even the women in the community said, if you put the word lesbian on the cover, we're going to have to come out every single time we want to pick up the magazine. Do people really want to do that? But I felt really strongly that, it was taking a stance that I was going to fight to have that word on the cover. And, through the ages, through the years, it became a question after I sold the magazine. Was that still the right approach? Is that how women are still identifying today? And that's a story that we go through. We ask that question throughout the movie. Do women embrace that term, or do they shun from it?
Yeah. So was that always, like, when you were first coming up with the idea for the film, was that always the intention to kind of do that examination, or was it kind of prompted by the call you got from Silka about the potential future of Curve?
Can I just say, I know I'm going to let Jen and Rivkah answer this, but we were like halfway through the filming when Silka called me and said that. And so what people see as the beginning of the movie is actually midway through, and everything I think about the movie changed at that point.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we started off telling the historical story. We were just going to really cover mostly from the time that Franco was outed to her family through the lawsuit and the name change of the magazine. And that was kind of it. It was a historical piece before that fateful email came from Silka. And that really did change everything. But, I think that the exploration of the word, it's something that we were digging into with, even from the stage of pre-interviews, when we were having early conversations with everyone. How do you identify? Do you think that word is important? Because the word was already off the cover of the magazine at that point. And it was, I remember when it happened, and I remember your reaction and being just like, it's like a gut punch.
Well, something that I fought really hard for. And I was really saddened by the fact that it didn't allude to that somewhere on the cover, because, if you just walked up to a newsstand and saw this magazine, how would you know it was for you? It didn't say for women who love women, for queer women, for LGBTQ women, for lesbians. I have an affinity for the word lesbian, and I know a lot of people today have mixed feelings about it. Mm-hmm. So, having something on the cover, I think, was important. And for me, it was important to say lesbian.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I just saw a comment pop up from Danica saying that, that there is now a fear of being thought of as exclusionary if you use the word lesbian. And I believe that that's connected with a very, very small but very vocal, unfortunately, group of older lesbians, mostly white lesbians, gender, who are TERFs. They're trans exclusionary radical feminists, as I guess how we call them in the community. It's really unfortunate. And I had thought, and I think Rivkah perhaps thought the same thing early on in making the film, that because of this fear that the word lesbian had fallen completely out of favor and younger generations were not using the word. And we were surprised and delighted to see, as we went out into the world, younger women embracing the term and taking it back.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting kind of thing for us. Like, we are called Queer Screen, and we've been around for 27 years. And back then, when it was created by a group of filmmakers in Sydney, like, it was used as a thing to take the word queer back. And so we're kind of actually lucky that we've gotten to this point where we've got a very inclusive word, even though it is still a word that some people aren't a huge fan of. Then you've also got so many other LGBTIQ plus film festivals around the world have only the words gay and lesbian in their title, and are now grappling with that thing about how you be inclusive as an organisation to represent, the diversity of our community. I wanted to talk a little bit about nostalgia. So one of the things that has definitely happened, like, I've basically been telling everyone to watch this documentary, and particularly anyone who was out in the 90s or knew that they were a lesbian in the 90s, because they'll literally be like, that's me. So you had so much great footage that you could kind of call upon. So I just sort of wanted to just talk a little bit about the process of going through and finding all of that and compiling it all together.
Well, when I let her go through all my stuff, I mean everything, like home video, footage of, me and my curb crew on the road, changing our clothes in the back of a minivan, everything.
And most of that footage, well, quite a bit of that footage was in our garage. So, again, like it was meant to be, this story had to be told. And we had such an incredible treasure trove right here in our own garage. It was so much fun, to go through that first big wave of like, oh, let's digitize all these. Oh my goodness, you had things on all kinds of weird formats from the 90s and the 2000s, and to digitize them and look at them, it was like opening a gift every single time, looking through to see, what nugget's going to come from this one. And there were a few like beauties. I will never forget seeing the one of the New Year's Eve, your clip from New Year's Eve, where you say something like, well, something about Catherine Deneuve and waking up the next day with something not good happening to her. and then we there were a few holes.
That little scene, if you watch to the end of the movie after the credits, there's a little bonus.
Yep, it's worth the wait.
I don't even think I knew that.
Well, we really wanted to immerse people in that time, right? So we have, essentially a couple audiences for this film, and we have people who will, be very nostalgic over all this footage. And I also just want to shout out to Paige Hodel, who had a lot of footage from Club Q, this incredible party that she threw in San Francisco, a dance party. And we just, we wanted to make sure that people could really feel what it was like. And also, for people who were there at the time, but then also for younger people, younger queer folk who are pining for that kind of imagery, and really to understand, what did it look like? What did it feel like? And that's, so we've gotten a lot of feedback like that was, that's been really resonating with our audiences.
I believe it's this. Was it this? Cockroaches in here on the road. Oh, on the ball. Go, Tonica.
I do not remember saying that. I didn't make those videos. We didn't make those videos thinking anyone was ever going to watch them.
No, of course. And so, what sort of feedback have you been getting? Like, what sort of reception? Because obviously, you're pretty much playing everywhere, and it's such a shame that that we're in this weird 2020 when it's obviously a very different experience to what you probably imagined. Was there any any hesitation to be like, we're just going to hold off? This has been such a passion project. Like, we're going to hold off. We're going to release it in 2025. I have no idea. I don't know when the world's going to right itself. Or have you just gone, you know what? People need to see this, so we're just going to get it out there?
Rivkah, do you want to take that one? It was so intense.
Sure. Well, I love this question, right? Because, of course, we grappled with this doesn't look like anything we know. This distribution landscape, this festival run is very unusual. And so in May, we had worked with Frameline, and they were so generous, and we knew we wanted to premiere with them. We thought we were going to be premiering at the Castro Theater in San Francisco. I don't know if anyone in Australia knows this theater. It's epic. It's beautiful. The Frameline Festival always has incredible films play there. And then when COVID happened and we knew that couldn't happen, we were invited to do something with Frameline. They were thinking of doing something around Pride weekend. It was intense. And then in the US, and I'm sure, this was happening around the world, we had a confluence of COVID and then racial justice reckoning with the murders of George Floyd. And so many others that had like marked this decades old struggle. So we didn't know what we should do, really. We made the film in a really intersectional way, and we really wanted to highlight a lot of the younger activists who Franco met with. And then we had this idea that maybe we could bring our community together at a drive-in theater, and we could celebrate Pride in the way that really a lot of the original Prides were celebrated, which were more as an uprising. And so we decided to take a page from Franco's book. We were like, ask ourselves, what would Franco have done? And we said, well, she would go for it. She would get out, she would get community together and get everyone talking. And this film is a tool to bring people together. And we are doing that. So yeah, that's how that worked.
I gotta say, our hearts just broke when we realized, oh my gosh, so amazing. We got into Sydney and we can't go. We can't go and be there with you.
Yeah. I know. It's really tough. And it's just like, it's in Australia, we don't have the numbers that are happening in the US, but I don't know when our borders are going to be open again. So
no Americans, that's for sure.
Not right now.
Probably not. What have we got? We've got Jess saying something. Releasing the current environment, I wonder if you've reached even more people than a traditional festival format. It allowed people to stream it all around Australia who aren't in city and major cities, so important for queer community access in regional areas. That is it. And also the fact that, like many LGBTIQ film festivals, and many events, it's often harder to attract women to those events than it is to attract men through various reasons. I know a bunch of lesbian mothers who have small children who are just like, oh my God, I get to watch this film. I never would have been able to come and, get a sitter and do that whole thing. And so it is, I do think, there is that chance of people being able to see it who would not normally have been able to, which is exciting.
It's a lovely surprise bonus that little bone that we've gotten thrown. But yeah, and I think you're right. And I think it's going to impact the way that festivals operate, even once we're able to gather in person. I mean, the way that we're able to connect in a deeper way, and it's not just folks in rural areas, but disabled folks also who
absolutely
are able to come to physical theaters.
It is. It's absolutely. It is that thing about creating community in the best way that you can, and looking at silver linings to this totally bizarre world that we are all in right now. I had a question submitted to me overnight that I was going to read. With so much information and misinformation floating around and being pushed at us in cases to suit particular agendas in the media, how do you think we can keep the positive messages and our hard-fought history of the LGBTIQ community, and particularly the lesbian community, front of mind?
Keep telling our stories ourselves.
Yeah. Agree with that.
Yeah.
I think it's really powerful how you and Rivkah made this film with a whole female cast and crew. I know that wasn't easy. It's really difficult to fill some of those spots with qualified people, and then you really wanted them to all be women identified. So
women and non-binary. It has been really important and continues to be really important to us to make sure that look, we get to, we were in a really fortunate position that we got to surround ourselves with exactly the community we wanted to surround ourselves with, and we took we have a little something Rivkah and I call the NAR. I guess I'm allowed to say this, right? It's the no asshole rule.
Rule.
And we took it up a notch even with this production, and made sure that everybody we brought on was down to become really part of the family, to nurture one another, to mentor one another, and help build skill within community. And it was such a joyful set as a result.
Yeah, right. And obviously you got kind of like a who's who of lesbians and to interview as part of the subjects. Can you talk a little bit about how you managed to compile all of those people, and the difference perhaps in trying to compile people to interview back in the 90s in comparison to now?
Well, for us back in the 90s, I mean, when we got our first, lesbian, Melissa Etheridge, I thought we had made the big time.
You did. You had. That was huge.
Yeah, you had.
With notoriety, and recognizability to be in the pages of the magazine. Anytime our readers could see themselves reflected in there and their idols, wow, that's just so powerful. And, going back to the idea of, how we propel our community forward is, in my opinion, really by telling our stories. What are the people in our community going through right now, and what have they been through?
That's true. No one can tell our stories the way that we do.
Absolutely.
No, and absolutely, and it is that so much authenticity. And from a film festival programming perspective, we don't get enough films made about lesbians who've done incredible things in our history. And this year there's two. There's this one and Surviving the Silence, which we're also showing. And it's just I'm like, what? I can't believe it. Normally I'm like, where are the lesbian history documentaries? And here they are. And so people can watch Surviving the Silence if they haven't already, because they are incredible kick-ass women in a completely different way. But yeah, it's cool that you're doing the festival circuit with them as well.
Yeah, it is. We have this law now in several states in the United States where the schools need to teach queer history in the lower schools.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
I know, you looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, did I get that wrong?
No, you nailed it. Yeah, there are 4 states in the U.S. now that mandate queer history to be taught at high school level.
Really? That's so amazing.
I know. I'm so thrilled. So we're
really hoping to get the film into schools as well.
Yeah, educational is really important for us.
Can I just say, when you do, when the narrative film is actually made, I would like to see a lot more sex in it, because being with Curve through the 90s and 2000s, there was some crazy stories that didn't make it into that final cut.
Oh, I wrote them all down.
Okay. She hasn't even done all of them.
That's why it has to be an episodic and not just a narrative film, because there's
too much to cover.
Yeah. I can say that that Australia and Sydney in particular had played quite a dramatic role in that in my earlier life.
That is true. So I have 2 things to say. First of all, we're just going to have to do so much research for that project. So much research. And also, I think it's now very clear. I really am the luckiest woman in the world. Who I got to be married to. Yeah, more sex. Yes, that's what I meant.
What a way to.
It's nighttime here. That's the thing. It's nighttime here.
Yeah. No, it is 1:30 in the afternoon here. Look, it's any age. Look, we're all locked up in our homes. So what else are you going to do with your day? I want to just end by asking you what it is really that you ultimately would like from this film, its journey, and what you want people to get from the experience of watching it.
I want everyone who watches this film to know who Franco was and is, this incredible role model for our community, a woman who in meeting her own needs met the needs of her whole community. I mean, that's such an inspiring story. I want at least, I think I want people to understand that we need to be ever vigilant to protect what rights we have and to make sure that we don't, that none slip away. And I would really love for everyone to know about the Curve Foundation. If you haven't watched the film yet, you'll learn about it. But it's really an important body of work, and it's what's coming next for Curve. That's what I'd like. Would you like anything else?
I don't really see this movie as my story, but as a story about how we can all make a difference. If somebody's not filling the void that you see, you can do something about it. Even if you're, 19 or 20 years old, it's like you can actually do something. Yeah,
that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me on your Tuesday night. This has been a fabulous interview. I could talk to you for hours, but I won't. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully when you make that narrative feature, you will be here in Sydney and we can screen it. I look forward to seeing Kristen Stewart or Laurie Petty back in the past. Maybe if you flash forward, Laurie Petty can play current you. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Sydney.
I'm going to now throw to the trailer. So if you haven't been convinced by this interview to watch the film, the trailer certainly will convince you.
Please welcome our panel of Power Dykes, Franco Stevens, publisher and editor-in-chief of Deneuve, the hottest lesbian magazine.
Deneuve, the leading lesbian magazine.
There wasn't a glossy magazine for lesbians anywhere. She decided, I'm going to make one. That's total rock and roll.
I love my job. I love my job. I love my job.
Whoever was in Curve, like that was it. That's how you knew what was going on.
Like the latest musicians,
in terms of like
the latest
lesbian
artists.
Yeah.
I think it's only in hindsight that I can fully appreciate what Franco had to sacrifice.
It was very hard to be out and open in the late 80s.
I think we should do away with gays if possible.
A lot of people lived in fear. Once I had a guy spit in my face.
We did not see ourselves represented in any positive mainstream way.
There was nothing that showed what my life was all about. I was the one that was supposed to start this magazine.
She got the idea and then she's just like, oh my God, I need money.
So I just applied for a bunch of credit cards all on the same day. I just cashed them all in.
And here they come.
I'm going to bet an exacta with 2 long shots, and my horses came in first and second. At the end of the day, I had enough money to start the magazine.
Do you know what the difference is between parsley and pussy?
What, Franco?
I don't know. I don't eat parsley.
Where can I find a woman like that?
When the magazine put me on the cover, it allowed women in our own community to see a well-spoken, funny, intelligent, charming, gentlemanly butch, which is basically who I am unless you cross my fucking path.
For the first time, we could see Black lesbians, Asian, working class women. Just the power of seeing me.
In the last 24 hours, I heard this thing that I never wanted to hear, that the magazine could be coming to an end.
As we became more visible, we also became a target.
We live in a systemic, racist, sexist, anti-LGBTQ world, and we have to fight it every day.
Dear straight people, why do I have to prove my love is authentic?
Visibility looks like us being able to be the authors of our own experience.
When there is so much at stake, our positive stories are some of the most powerful tools we have.
Every time we put out a magazine, it felt groundbreaking. Like the work was so important, and the work is not done.